The barking wouldn't stop. It pierced through the tranquil Sunday afternoon, shattering the peaceful ambience of Oak Ridge Avenue. Tanner Adams, decorated Army veteran with broad shoulders and kind eyes, stood frozen in his driveway. The sound came from his backyard, frantic, desperate, unlike anything he'd heard from his loyal companion before. He dropped his duffel bag and sprinted around the side of his modest two-story home, his heart pounding against his ribs. What he saw made his blood run cold. Atlas, his German shepherd, was barking frantically at the neighbor's fence. Not his usual territorial warning, but a desperate plea for help. The dog's normally gleaming coat was dull and matted. His powerful frame had deteriorated to a skeletal outline, ribs protruding sharply beneath his fur. A half-empty bowl of filthy water sat in the corner of the yard. "Atlas," Tanner whispered, his voice breaking. The dog turned, his ears perking up at the sound of his master's voice. For a brief moment his tail wagged weakly before he collapsed onto the ground, his energy completely spent. Tanner rushed forward, kneeling beside his faithful companion. Atlas had been left in the care of Tanner's cousin, Harvey, who had promised to look after him during Tanner's overseas deployment. Judging by Atlas's condition, Harvey had abandoned his responsibility long ago. "I'm so sorry, boy." "I'm so sorry," Tanner murmured, gently running his hands over the dog's emaciated body. Atlas whimpered, his dark eyes fixed on Tanner with an expression that nearly broke the soldier's heart. It wasn't accusation in those eyes, it was relief. Pushing aside his rising anger, Tanner carefully lifted Atlas into his arms. The dog felt frighteningly light, a shadow of the robust animal Tanner had left behind. With determined strides, he carried Atlas to his truck and gently placed him on the passenger seat. "Hang on, buddy. We're going to fix this." The veterinary clinic was unusually quiet for a Sunday afternoon. When Dr. Renata Foster saw Tanner walk in with Atlas in his arms, her professional composure momentarily faltered. "What happened?" she asked, immediately leading them to an examination room. "I just got home from deployment," Tanner explained, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "My cousin was supposed to be taking care of him." Dr. Foster's expression darkened as she examined Atlas. Her gentle hands moved methodically over his frail body while she spoke softly to him. "Severe malnutrition, dehydration," she noted. "How long were you away?" 8 months. He was perfectly healthy when I left." Dr. Foster nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Atlas needs immediate fluids and careful refeeding. I'm also concerned about potential organ damage from the prolonged malnutrition." As the veterinary team worked to stabilize Atlas, Tanner paced the waiting room, alternating between worry for his dog and fury at his cousin. The rage bubbling inside him demanded action, to confront Harvey, to make him understand the suffering he had caused. But Atlas needed him now. Revenge could wait. Hours later, Dr. Foster emerged from the treatment area, her face showing cautious optimism. "He's responding well to the IV fluids. We'll need to keep him for at least a few days to monitor his recovery and implement a careful refeeding protocol." Tanner nodded, relief washing over him. "Can I see him?" Dr. Foster led him to a recovery kennel where Atlas lay on a comfortable bed, connected to various monitoring equipment. When the dog saw Tanner, his tail gave a feeble thump against the bedding. "Hey, buddy," Tanner whispered, kneeling beside the kennel. "You're going to be okay now, I promise." That night, in his empty house, Tanner couldn't sleep. Images of Atlas's suffering haunted him, along with questions that had no easy answers. How long had Harvey neglected his dog? Why hadn't anyone in the neighborhood noticed or intervened? When morning came, Tanner made a decision. This wasn't just about Atlas or Harvey's betrayal. It was about something larger. The system had failed his loyal companion, and perhaps others were suffering the same fate. With steely determination, Tanner picked up his phone and called an old friend from high school who now worked at the local newspaper. "Blake, it's Tanner Adams. I need to tell you a story." Blake Parker arrived at Tanner's house an hour later, notebook in hand. His lean frame and attentive eyes hadn't changed much since their school days, though responsibility had etched subtle lines into his face. "This better be good, Tanner. I don't usually do house calls for stories," Blake said, though his smile took the edge off his words. "Trust me, this needs to be told." Tanner recounted everything: his homecoming, finding Atlas starving, the veterinary diagnosis. Blake took detailed notes, his expression growing more serious with each revelation. "What about your cousin? Have you confronted him?" Tanner shook his head. "Not yet. I wanted to make sure Atlas was stable first." "And the neighbors? Did none of them notice a dog starving in plain sight?" "That's what I keep asking myself," Tanner replied. "How does something like this happen without anyone stepping in?" Blake closed his notebook with a thoughtful expression. "People see what they want to see, Tanner. They hear a dog barking and assume it's fine. They notice it looking thin but figure the owner must know best." He paused. "Or worse, they see it and choose not to get involved." "Well, I'm involved now," Tanner said firmly. After Blake left, promising to write a piece that would bring attention to animal neglect in their community, Tanner drove to the veterinary clinic to check on Atlas. The dog was already showing improvement, his eyes brighter and more alert, though his body would need much longer to recover. Dr. Foster provided a cautiously optimistic update. "His blood work is showing improvement, and he's keeping down small amounts of food. But Tanner," she added, her voice softening, "you should prepare yourself. Cases of severe neglect like this can sometimes have long-term consequences." Tanner nodded, absorbing her words while gently stroking Atlas's head. "Whatever happens, whatever he needs, I'm here for him now." As he was leaving the clinic, Tanner nearly collided with a woman entering with a carrier containing a small, trembling chihuahua. She was strikingly beautiful, with warm brown eyes and dark hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. "Sorry," they both said simultaneously. She smiled apologetically, and Tanner felt an unexpected lightness in his chest, the first positive feeling since his return home. "No harm done," he assured her, holding the door. Their brief encounter lingered in Tanner's mind as he drove home, a momentary bright spot in the darkness of the past 24 hours. When Tanner arrived home, he found a police car parked in his driveway. Officer Dominic Walsh, a solid man with a carefully neutral expression, was waiting for him. "Mr. Adams, I understand you've made some serious allegations against your cousin, Harvey Bennett." Tanner frowned. "I haven't made any formal allegations yet. I've been focused on getting medical care for my dog." Officer Walsh nodded. "Mr. Bennett contacted us this morning. He claims you've been spreading false information about him, potentially damaging his reputation." Anger flared in Tanner's chest. "False information? My dog nearly died under his care." "I understand you're upset, but Mr. Bennett tells a different story. He says your dog was in poor health before he took responsibility, and that he did everything he could to care for the animal." Tanner stared at the officer in disbelief. "That's a lie. Atlas was in perfect health when I left, certified by his veterinarian, and my neighbor saw him just after I deployed. She can confirm his condition." "These situations can get complicated," Officer Walsh said carefully. "Family disputes often—" "This isn't a family dispute," Tanner interrupted, his voice tight with controlled anger. "This is about criminal neglect of an animal I entrusted to someone who promised to care for him." Before Officer Walsh could respond, a car pulled into the driveway behind them. Harvey Bennett, Tanner's cousin, stepped out. His handsome face was arranged in an expression of wounded innocence that made Tanner's blood boil. "I came to clear this up," Harvey announced, approaching them with practiced confidence. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding." Tanner struggled to maintain his composure. "The only thing I misunderstood was your character." Harvey turned to Officer Walsh with a pained expression. "See what I mean? He's not being rational about this. The dog was sick when he left. I did everything I could." "That's not true," Tanner countered, addressing the officer rather than his cousin. "I have documentation of Atlas's health before I deployed, and my neighbor Mrs. Finley saw him regularly. She can tell you how his condition changed." Officer Walsh looked between the two men, clearly reluctant to take sides in what appeared to be a heated family matter. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion down at the station," he suggested. "Fine by me," Tanner agreed firmly. "And I'll be filing a formal complaint of animal neglect while we're there." Harvey's confident facade cracked slightly, a flicker of unease crossing his features. "This is ridiculous. You can't possibly—" "I have photos," came a voice from across the street. All three men turned to see an elderly woman standing on her porch, watching them with sharp eyes that belied her frail appearance. "Mrs. Finley," Tanner called. "I have photos," she repeated, making her way slowly but deliberately toward them. "I've been documenting that poor dog's condition for weeks now, trying to figure out who to report it to. When no one came to the house anymore, I started leaving food over the fence when I could." She reached them and fixed Harvey with a withering glare. "You stopped coming around long ago, young man. Thought no one was watching, did you?" Officer Walsh's demeanor shifted subtly. "Ma'am, would you be willing to provide these photographs as evidence?" "Already printed them out," Mrs. Finley replied, producing a large envelope from her handbag. "Been waiting for the right moment. When I saw Tanner come home yesterday, and then the police today, I knew it was time." As Officer Walsh examined the photographs, Harvey's confident posture deflated. The images told a damning story: Atlas's progressive deterioration over time, documented with dates and timestamps. "Mr. Bennett," Officer Walsh said, his voice now carrying an edge of authority, "I think you should accompany me to the station to answer some questions." Harvey's face hardened. "This is absurd. It's just a dog." The callousness of his statement hung in the air, revealing more about his character than any defense could have hidden. "Actually," came another voice, "in this state, animal neglect is a criminal offense." Blake Parker approached from his parked car, press credentials visible around his neck. "And I'd be very interested in hearing your explanation, Mr. Bennett, for the record, of course." Harvey looked frantically between the gathering faces: Tanner's controlled anger, Mrs. Finley's righteous indignation, Officer Walsh's professional suspicion, and Blake's journalistic interest. "Fine," he muttered, visibly deflating. "Let's go to the station." As Officer Walsh escorted Harvey to the police car, Tanner turned to Mrs. Finley with genuine gratitude. "Thank you. I had no idea you were looking out for Atlas." The elderly woman patted his arm. "He's a good dog, always friendly when I'd see you walking him. When I realized what was happening, I did what I could, though it wasn't enough." Her eyes clouded with regret. "I should have done more sooner." "You did more than anyone else," Tanner assured her. Blake approached them, notebook already in hand. "Mrs. Finley, would you be willing to share your perspective for my article? I think people need to understand how community vigilance, or lack thereof, impacts these situations." As Mrs. Finley began recounting her observations to Blake, Tanner's phone rang. It was Dr. Foster from the veterinary clinic. "Tanner, I think you should come down here. There's something you need to see." The urgency in her voice sent a chill through him. Had Atlas taken a turn for the worse? "I'll be right there," he promised, already moving toward his truck. Whatever new challenge awaited, Tanner knew one thing with absolute certainty: he would face it head-on. Atlas had never abandoned his duty as a loyal companion. Tanner would not abandon him now. What he didn't know was that the situation at the veterinary clinic would lead him down a path he never expected, one that would uncover secrets far beyond his cousin's betrayal and challenge everything he thought he knew about his community. Tanner raced to the veterinary clinic, his mind conjuring worst-case scenarios with each passing minute. Had Atlas taken a turn for the worse? Had there been complications they hadn't anticipated? The clinic's waiting room was busier now than during his earlier visit. A woman with a cat carrier sat beside a man holding a whimpering beagle puppy. At the reception desk, Tanner recognized the beautiful woman he'd bumped into earlier. She was deep in conversation with the receptionist, her chihuahua peering nervously from its carrier. "I'm here to see Dr. Foster," Tanner announced, slightly out of breath. "She called about my dog, Atlas." The receptionist nodded. "She's expecting you. Go on back." As Tanner moved toward the treatment area, he noticed the dark-haired woman watching him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher, concern mixed with something else. He found Dr. Foster in the exam room with Atlas, who was still connected to IV fluids but sitting up, more alert than before. Relief washed over Tanner. "He's doing better," he observed, kneeling to gently stroke Atlas's head. "Yes, he's making remarkable progress, Doctor," Foster confirmed. "But that's not why I called you here." She hesitated, then continued. "During our examination, we found something unusual." She gestured to a small area on Atlas's neck, partially hidden by his fur. At first I thought it might be an injury or an embedded tick, but upon closer inspection, she carefully parted the fur to reveal a tiny object embedded just beneath the skin. "What is that?" Tanner asked, leaning closer. "It appears to be some sort of microchip, but not a standard pet identification chip. Those are inserted at the scruff of the neck, and they're passive. They don't transmit anything. This is something else entirely." Tanner's military training kicked in immediately. "A tracking device?" Dr. Foster nodded grimly. "That would be my guess. And it's not something any legitimate veterinarian would have implanted." A chill ran down Tanner's spine. "Can you remove it?" "Already did." She held up a small evidence bag containing what looked like a grain of rice with microscopic circuitry. "I've preserved it in case you want to have it analyzed." Tanner took the bag, turning it over in his fingers. "Who would put a tracker on my dog, and why?" Before Dr. Foster could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. The dark-haired woman from the reception area stood in the doorway, her expression solemn. "I couldn't help overhearing," she said, "and I think I might know something about this." Dr. Foster's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Olivia? What do you mean?" The woman, Olivia, stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "I'm Olivia Benson. I work for the district attorney's office specializing in property crimes." "Property crimes?" Tanner echoed, confused. "What does that have to do with my dog?" Olivia took a deep breath. "For the past few months, we've been investigating a series of high-end burglaries throughout the county. The targets have all been homes with specific profiles, valuable items, predictable owner absences, and minimal security systems. Like homes of deployed military personnel," Tanner guessed, the pieces beginning to fall into place. Olivia nodded. "Exactly. We believe the burglars are using pets as a way to scout properties. They implant tracking devices to monitor movement patterns, which reveals when homes are empty and for how long." "But Atlas never left my property," Tanner objected. "He stayed in the backyard." "That's what's been confusing us," Olivia admitted. "We've recovered several of these devices from pets in the neighborhood, but no break-ins occurred at those specific homes. It's like they were gathering intelligence, but never acted on it." Tanner's mind raced, connecting dots. "My cousin Harvey, he was supposed to be caring for Atlas. He had access to my home, my property." His voice hardened. "And he suddenly has a lot of new, expensive things that he definitely couldn't afford on his salary." Olivia's eyes widened. "Your cousin? We need to talk to him immediately." "He's already at the police station," Tanner informed her, "being questioned about animal neglect." "This just got a lot more complicated," Dr. Foster murmured. Olivia pulled out her phone. "I need to call my supervisor. If your cousin is connected to these burglaries, this could break our case wide open." As Olivia stepped out to make her call, Tanner sat beside Atlas, gently stroking the dog's head. The betrayal felt even deeper now. Harvey hadn't just neglected Atlas, he had used him as a tool in a criminal enterprise. "He'll get what's coming to him," he promised his faithful companion. Dr. Foster sat across from him, her expression sympathetic. "Atlas is lucky to have you, Tanner. Many animals in his situation aren't so fortunate. I should have made better arrangements," Tanner said, guilt weighing on his words. "I trusted family without question." "We all want to believe the best of those close to us," Dr. Foster replied. "What matters is that you're here now, fighting for him." Their conversation was interrupted when Olivia returned, her expression grim but determined. "My supervisor is contacting the police station now. We'll want to interview your cousin separately." "I want to be there," Tanner stated firmly. Olivia hesitated. "That might complicate things. You're personally involved." "I'm a witness," Tanner countered. "And I know things about Harvey that might help your investigation." After a moment's consideration, Olivia nodded. "All right, but Atlas needs to stay here under observation," Dr. Foster agreed. "He's stable but not ready to go home yet." Tanner knelt beside Atlas, looking into the shepherd's intelligent eyes. "I'll be back soon, buddy. You focus on getting stronger." As they prepared to leave for the police station, Blake Parker arrived at the clinic, notepad in hand. "Tanner, I was looking for you. The story's taking an interesting turn." He stopped, noticing Olivia. "Oh, Hello. After brief introductions, Blake's journalistic instincts visibly sharpened. The DA's office is involved now. What exactly is going on? It's complicated, Tanner began. And sensitive, Olivia added firmly. Nothing for publication yet. Blake looked between them, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. But when this breaks, I want the exclusive. At the police station, they found a tense atmosphere. Officer Walsh met them at the entrance, his expression serious. Your cousin's lawyer just arrived, he informed Tanner, and he's demanding we release him immediately. Lawyer? Tanner was surprised. Harvey can barely afford rent. How does he have a lawyer? Exactly the question we're asking, Officer Walsh replied. Benjamin Lockhart, one of the most expensive criminal defense attorneys in the county. Olivia stepped forward, presenting her credentials. I need to speak with the suspect regarding an ongoing investigation. Officer Walsh looked relieved to have the district attorney's office involved. Follow me. They were led to an observation room adjacent to the interrogation room, where Harvey sat with his lawyer, a distinguished man in an impeccable suit. Harvey looked surprisingly composed for someone facing animal neglect charges. He doesn't seem worried, Tanner observed. Because he thinks the animal neglect charges are his only problem, Olivia replied. He doesn't know about the burglary investigation. Through the one-way glass, they watched as Detective Paula Ramirez entered the interrogation room. Her straightforward demeanor contrasted sharply with the lawyer's polished presence. Mr. Bennett, we have some additional questions for you, she began. My client has already explained the unfortunate misunderstanding regarding his cousin's dog, Lockhart interjected smoothly. Unless you're pressing formal charges, we'll be leaving. Detective Ramirez remained unruffled. Actually, we're interested in discussing some other matters, specifically your client's involvement in a series of burglaries targeting military personnel. The change in Harvey's expression was subtle but unmistakable, a flicker of shock quickly masked by feigned confusion. That's absurd, he protested. I have nothing to do with any burglaries. Detective Ramirez placed a photograph on the table, the tiny tracking device removed from Atlas. Then perhaps you can explain how this tracking device ended up implanted in your cousin's dog while under your care. Harvey's composure slipped further. He glanced uncertainly at his lawyer, who looked equally surprised by this new development. I need a moment with my client, Lockhart requested. Of course, Detective Ramirez agreed, gathering her materials. But I should mention, we're executing a search warrant at Mr. Bennett's residence as we speak. If there's anything he'd like to tell us before we find it ourselves, now would be the time. As she exited the interrogation room, Tanner felt a complex mixture of emotions, satisfaction that Harvey was facing consequences, anger at the betrayal, and sadness that family could turn against family so completely. What happens now? He asked Olivia. We wait, she replied. People in Harvey's position typically start calculating their options very quickly. I suspect his expensive lawyer is already discussing a potential deal. Tanner's phone rang. Dr. Foster calling with an update on Atlas. The dog was continuing to improve, eating small meals and showing more energy. The simple good news was a bright spot in the darkness of betrayal. As he ended the call, Blake approached, having observed the interrogation from a distance. This is bigger than animal neglect, isn't it? He asked quietly. Tanner nodded, seeing no reason to hide what was soon to become public. Harvey was part of a burglary ring targeting military homes. They used pets to scout locations. Blake's expression hardened. That's beyond low, targeting the homes of people serving their country, using their pets as tools. He shook his head in disgust. When this story breaks, it's going to hit hard. Good, Tanner said firmly. People need to know. Hours passed as they waited for developments. Harvey and his lawyer remained closeted in the interrogation room, presumably negotiating with the prosecutors who had joined them. Mrs. Finley arrived at the station. Her evidence of Atlas's neglect now expanded to include dates and times when she had observed strange visitors at Tanner's home during his deployment. 2 men in a white van, she reported. They came 3 times, always when Harvey was there. I thought they might be friends of his, but they never stayed long. Olivia took detailed notes. Did you happen to notice the license plate or any markings on the van? Mrs. Finley smiled slyly. I got partial plates, wrote them down in my little notebook. At my age, you never trust your memory. Tanner couldn't help but smile at the elderly woman's unexpected vigilance. Mrs. Finley, you're remarkable. She patted his hand affectionately. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn to pay attention, especially when it comes to protecting your neighborhood. As evening approached, the door to the interrogation room finally opened. Harvey emerged, looking defeated, flanked by his lawyer and Detective Ramirez. Your cousin has agreed to cooperate fully with our investigation, Detective Ramirez informed Tanner, in exchange for certain considerations regarding sentencing. Harvey couldn't meet Tanner's eyes as he was led away to formal processing. He gave up his accomplices, Olivia explained, joining them with a satisfied expression. Names, addresses, details of their operation. They've been targeting military families across 3 counties. What about Atlas? Tanner asked. Will Harvey face charges for what he did to him? Absolutely, Detective Ramirez confirmed. The animal neglect charges remain separate from the burglary case. He'll answer for both crimes. As they prepared to leave the station, Tanner felt the weight of the day's revelations pressing upon him. What had begun as a homecoming had transformed into an unexpected journey through betrayal, justice, and the strange ways fate sometimes worked through the most innocent of creatures. Atlas, through his suffering, had not only exposed Harvey's neglect, but had unwittingly helped break open a criminal enterprise that had victimized numerous families. There was a certain poetic justice in that, though it did little to ease the pain of knowing how his faithful companion had suffered. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, Atlas's continued recovery, potential testimony against Harvey and his accomplices, and the inevitable media attention when Blake's story broke. But for now, Tanner's only plan was to return to the veterinary clinic, sit beside his loyal friend, and be present in the way Harvey never had been. What he didn't yet realize was that this ordeal was far from over. The tracker in Atlas's neck was just the beginning of a mystery that ran deeper than anyone suspected, one that would challenge Tanner's understanding of loyalty, justice, and the unexpected heroes who sometimes emerge from the shadows. 3 weeks after Tanner's return, Atlas was finally cleared to go home. His recovery had been remarkable, his coat regaining its luster, his frame filling out with healthy muscle mass. As Dr. Foster completed her final examination, her smile confirmed what Tanner already knew. He's going to be just fine, she announced. You'll need to continue the special diet for another month, but otherwise he's made a full recovery. Tanner knelt beside Atlas, receiving an enthusiastic face licking in return. Hear that, buddy? You're coming home today. The investigation into the burglary ring had progressed rapidly following Harvey's confession. 8 arrests had been made, including the ringleader, a man named Victor Reeves who had specifically targeted military families while they served overseas. Your cousin was just a small part of their operation, Olivia had explained during one of her regular updates. They recruited people with connections to military personnel, family members, neighbors, even cleaning services, to place tracking devices and gather intelligence. What had begun as animal neglect charges against Harvey had expanded into a multi-jurisdiction case that had recovered stolen property for dozens of families. The press had dubbed it Operation Watchdog, after Atlas's role in breaking the case. Blake's initial article had gone viral, picked up by national media outlets, and sparking conversations about both animal welfare and the vulnerability of military families during deployments. He'd been careful to keep Atlas at the center of the story, the loyal dog whose suffering had inadvertently exposed a criminal enterprise. As Tanner prepared to settle the bill, Dr. Foster waved him off. It's been taken care of. What? By who? Anonymous donor, she replied with a cryptic smile. Said it was the least they could do for a hero dog and his owner. Outside the clinic, Tanner was surprised to find a small gathering waiting for him, Mrs. Finley, Blake, and several military families who had been victims of the burglary ring. Their applause as he emerged with Atlas was unexpected and slightly embarrassing. There he is. The hero of the hour, called one of the veterans, stepping forward to shake Tanner's hand. Atlas, still thin but vastly improved, stood tall beside his owner, tail wagging at the attention. I didn't do anything special, Tanner protested. Anyone would have done the same for their dog. Not just the dog, Mrs. Finley corrected. You helped catch criminals who were preying on military families. That's something special. Blake approached with a young woman by his side, the wife of a currently deployed Marine whose home had been burglarized. Melissa wanted to meet Atlas. Her wedding rings were among the recovered items. The woman knelt to gently pet Atlas. "Thank you," she whispered, though whether to the dog or to Tanner wasn't entirely clear. Perhaps it was both. As the impromptu gathering dispersed, Olivia arrived, her chihuahua Max, tucked securely in her arms. The tiny dog had become a regular visitor at the clinic during Atlas's recovery, often sitting beside the much larger shepherd in a show of unlikely solidarity. "I have news," she said, after greeting them both. "The DA is offering Harvey a plea deal, 10 years for his role in the burglaries with an additional 2 for animal cruelty." Tanner absorbed this information, his feelings toward his cousin still complex. The anger remained, but it had dulled somewhat in the face of justice being served. "And Reeves?" he asked, referring to the ringleader. "Going to trial. He's facing at least 20 years. She hesitated before adding, "There's something else you should know. The investigation revealed that Harvey was being blackmailed by Reeves." "Blackmailed for what?" "Gambling debts. Apparently Harvey got in deep at some underground poker games. Reeves offered to forgive the debt if Harvey would help with their operation." This new information didn't excuse what Harvey had done, but it added another layer to the betrayal. Had his cousin felt trapped? Had he seen no other way out? "I'd like to speak with him," Tanner decided, "before he's sentenced." Olivia nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I'll arrange it." The reunion with Harvey took place in a stark visitation room at the county jail. His cousin looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, the confident facade completely gone. "I didn't think you'd come," Harvey said, unable to meet Tanner's eyes. "I almost didn't," Tanner admitted, "but I needed to understand why." Harvey's explanation was predictably self-serving at first. How he'd gotten in over his head with gambling, how Reeves had threatened him, how he'd convinced himself that the tracking device wouldn't actually harm Atlas. "But why did you stop caring for him?" Tanner pressed. "The tracking device is one thing, but you left him to starve." At this, Harvey finally showed genuine remorse, his carefully constructed excuses crumbling. "I couldn't face it," he confessed, voice breaking. "Every time I looked at him, I was reminded of what I was doing to you, to all those families, so I just stopped coming around. I told myself someone else would notice, would step in." He looked up, anguish in his eyes. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I am sorry, Tanner, for all of it." Tanner sat in silence, weighing his cousin's words against the suffering he had caused. Finally, he stood. "I can't forgive you yet," he said honestly. "Maybe someday, but not now. What I can do is stop hating you. That's all I have to offer." It wasn't the absolution Harvey had hoped for, but it was something. As Tanner turned to leave, his cousin called after him. "How is he? Atlas?" "He's strong," Tanner replied simply. "He survived." The days that followed brought a gradual return to normalcy, though normal had taken on a new definition. Atlas thrived under Tanner's care, quickly regaining his strength and playful spirit. The community that had formed around his recovery remained connected, with Mrs. Finley bringing over weekly treats for her brave boy, and Blake stopping by for updates on his follow-up stories. Dr. Foster became a regular visitor as well, ostensibly to check on Atlas's progress, though Tanner couldn't help noticing how her visits often coincided with his days off. The subtle dance of their growing attraction was a bright spot in the aftermath of everything that had happened. Mrs. Finley, ever observant, hadn't missed the development. "That veterinarian of yours has a kind heart," she remarked one afternoon while watching Dr. Foster and Atlas playing fetch in the backyard. "And she's quite beautiful too, wouldn't you say?" Tanner's smile was answer enough. Olivia too had become part of their expanding circle, her professional interest in the case having evolved into genuine friendship. Her chihuahua, Max, had developed an improbable bond with Atlas, the tiny dog fearlessly bossing around his giant friend, to everyone's amusement. 6 months after Tanner's return, Blake's final article on Operation Watchdog was published, detailing how all the stolen property had been returned and how the case had led to new security measures for military families during deployments. To celebrate, they gathered in Tanner's backyard. Dr. Foster, now simply Renata to everyone, Olivia, Blake, Mrs. Finley, and several of the military families who had been affected by the burglary ring. Atlas moved among them like a furry ambassador, accepting pets and treats with gracious dignity. "I've been thinking," Tanner announced as they enjoyed dinner together on the patio, "about starting a program for military pets." "What kind of program?" Blake asked, journalist instincts immediately engaging. "Something to ensure proper care for animals during deployments. Vetted caregivers, regular check-ins, maybe even a foster network for emergency situations." Renata smiled, clearly approving of the idea. "The clinic could help with reduced-cost wellness checks. And I could coordinate with military family support services," Olivia added. "They're already looking for new initiatives after everything that happened." Mrs. Finley tapped her glass with a spoon, drawing everyone's attention. "I'd like to make the first donation," she declared. "My late husband was a veteran, and he would have approved of this venture entirely." As they discussed the possibilities, Tanner watched Atlas playing with the children of one of the military families. The shepherd, now fully recovered, was gentle with the young ones, seemingly understanding his responsibility toward these smaller, more vulnerable beings. It struck Tanner then that something remarkable had emerged from the darkness of betrayal and neglect. A community had formed, connections had been made, and a greater good was being served, all because of one loyal dog's suffering and resilience. Later that evening, as the gathering wound down, Tanner found himself sitting on the porch steps with Renata, Atlas curled contentedly at their feet. "He's quite extraordinary," she observed, watching the shepherd's peaceful sleep. "Most animals wouldn't bounce back so completely from what he endured." "He's always been special," Tanner agreed, "but I never imagined he'd change so many lives." "Including yours," Renata said softly. Tanner nodded, acknowledging the truth of her words. His homecoming had been nothing like he'd expected. The betrayal, the investigation, the unexpected connections. Yet somehow, it had led him exactly where he needed to be. "I've been meaning to ask you something," he said, turning to face her. "Would you be interested in dinner sometime, just the two of us?" Her smile was answer enough. 1 year to the day after Tanner's return, the Military Pet Guardian program officially launched, with Atlas as its mascot. The initiative, which provided support and oversight for pets of deployed service members, had already signed up hundreds of volunteers across several states. Harvey, serving his sentence, had written to express genuine remorse and to offer what little insight he could into the vulnerabilities that had allowed Reeves's operation to succeed. His information had helped strengthen the program's security protocols. Mrs. Finley had become the program's most enthusiastic volunteer, coordinating neighborhood watch efforts specifically focused on the homes and pets of deployed personnel. At her suggestion, they had integrated a community reporting system that allowed neighbors to flag concerns quickly and effectively. Blake's ongoing coverage had attracted national attention, bringing in donors and corporate sponsors eager to support the cause. He had recently been offered a position with a major news network, but had chosen to stay local, unwilling to leave the community and story that had come to mean so much to him. Olivia had worked with military lawyers to draft legislation protecting service members' property during deployments, with specific provisions for animal welfare. The Atlas Act, as it was informally known, was gaining bipartisan support and seemed likely to pass. And as for Tanner and Renata, their relationship had blossomed alongside the program they had helped create. Their shared passion for animal welfare and military support had formed a foundation stronger than either could have anticipated. Atlas, fully restored to health and happiness, had become something of a local celebrity. Children would point him out when Tanner walked him through the neighborhood, whispering excitedly about the hero dog. The shepherd bore his fame with characteristic dignity, though he never refused the treats that often accompanied recognition. On a crisp autumn evening, Tanner sat on his back porch, Atlas at his side, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. Renata would be arriving soon for dinner, and the others would join them later to celebrate the program's anniversary. As he scratched behind Atlas's ears, Tanner reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as a tragedy, a soldier returning to find his faithful companion neglected and suffering, had transformed into something powerful and positive, touching far more lives than he could have imagined. "We did good, didn't we, boy?" he murmured. Atlas looked up at him with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand every word, then rested his head on Tanner's knee with a contented sigh. In that simple gesture lay all the loyalty, forgiveness and love that had started this unexpected journey. The guardian's bark that had not only saved himself, but had created ripples of change still spreading outward. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Tanner made a silent promise to his faithful companion. The betrayal Atlas had endured would continue to be transformed into protection for others, ensuring that no military pet would suffer the same fate, and no homecoming would be marked by the same heartbreak. It was, he thought, exactly how this story was meant to end, not with retribution, but with redemption, not with isolation, but with community. And above all, with the unshakable bond between a man and his dog that had not only survived the worst of circumstances, but had emerged stronger, wiser, and more purposeful than before. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.